In April 2015, the small town of Leeton in New South Wales, Australia, came to a standstill. Businesses closed, and the local high school suspended classes as the community was engulfed in sorrow and mourning, gathering to honor the memory of Stephanie Scott and offer condolences to her family. Over 1,000 people attended Stephanie's funeral, and a public memorial was organized for everyone to join in the communal grief. Many attendees wore Stephanie's favorite color, yellow, releasing yellow balloons into the sky, symbolizing the liberation of her spirit soaring into the heavens. The gathering prayed for Stephanie's eternal rest and comfort and healing for her loved ones. The song chosen for Stephanie and her fiance Aaron's first wedding dance played, reminding everyone of the young couple's cruelly interrupted story, filling hearts with sadness and sorrow. Stephanie Scott, only 26 years old, was kind, intelligent, and always smiling. From childhood, she was curious and active, participating in school clubs and sports. As an adult, she followed in her father Robert's footsteps as a teacher, sharing his passion for education. She taught English and drama at Leeton High School, taking great pride in her work. Stephanie and Aaron, slightly younger than her, knew each other from a young age. They spent time together, shared interests, and played sports in their hometown. They were close friends until Aaron turned 21, when their relationship blossomed into romance. In early April 2015, Stephanie and Aaron were busily preparing for their wedding, scheduled for the 11th. Stephanie, a perfectionist, had spent months meticulously planning every detail. Almost everything was ready, with arrangements set and a honeymoon booked in Tahiti. She had recently celebrated her bachelorette party. The only remaining task was to rehearse their first dance, for which they had taken many lessons. The first weekend of April reminded them that their eagerly awaited day was almost upon them. Aaron invited Stephanie to join him at a party out of town, but she declined to finish some remaining tasks, including finalizing plans for her students during her honeymoon absence. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, around 11 a.m., Stephanie Scott headed to her school in Leeton, New South Wales, to hand over some work to a deputy teacher. She parked her car on the street and walked to meet a colleague who lived nearby. Together, they opened the school gates and entered. Stephanie then locked the gates behind them and, with keys in hand, proceeded to the English teacher's office. There, she sent an email to a bus company confirming transportation arrangements for her wedding guests. After working for a couple more hours, feeling joyful that all her tasks were successfully completed, Stephanie left the administrative building and walked towards the gates. Aaron, aware that Stephanie had left and would be away for a few hours, grew worried as the evening approached. He had texted her the day before and received prompt replies. However, on April 5th, he received no response from Stephanie. Returning home after 7 p.m., Aaron found that Stephanie was still not back, and her car was absent from the street. Trying to manage his anxiety, he reasoned that perhaps the stress of the upcoming wedding and leaving her students for an extended period had exhausted Stephanie, and she wanted some alone time. Yet, such complete silence was out of character for her. Even amidst the excitement of wedding planning, Stephanie had been enjoying every minute, eagerly sharing details about her dress and the wedding menu. She didn't appear nervous or depressed, but rather excited and ready for her big day. With his concern growing and sleep eluding him, Aaron texted Stephanie again in the morning before calling her family. More than a day had passed since Stephanie's disappearance, and Aaron went to the Leeton police station to report his missing fiancée. The police, after inspecting the vicinity and noting Stephanie's car's disappearance, speculated that she might have left the school and been involved in an accident or gotten stuck in a ditch or creek. Helicopters were deployed to search the area, while ground police headed straight to the last known location of Stephanie Leeton High School. Due to Easter Sunday and the limited number of people at the school, there were few witnesses, complicating the police investigation but also ruling out hundreds of potential suspects. A check of the school's alarm system in Stephanie's classroom revealed that she had deactivated it at 1:30 p.m. and reactivated it at 1:38 p.m. This provided the police with the precise time when Stephanie was nearby, but it was the only detail they could ascertain. Detectives attempted to use phone tracking, but Stephanie's mobile phone was turned off. The last activities on her bank accounts or social media were on Saturday, April 4th. Local news broadcasts began covering the story by April 7th, while hundreds in the small community eagerly sought any information about Stephanie. However, such behavior was completely uncharacteristic of Stephanie, and as each day passed with her wedding approaching, hope began to fade. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, stated that if her daughter was not found within the next few hours, it likely meant something terrible had happened. A reporter from a local newspaper in Leeton reported that the police resumed searching the school. They spent most of the day using digital mapping technology to study the school's premises, and specifically marked the room where Stephanie worked on the day of her disappearance. A witness near Leeton High School on Easter Sunday mentioned hearing strange noises around 2 p.m., like rustling and dragging something on the ground. He recalled seeing Stephanie's car under a covered walkway, but didn't think much of it at the time. Later, her car disappeared. Another witness, a school employee, told detectives about an odd conversation he had with one of the school's cleaners the morning after Stephanie's disappearance. Amidst the rumors and anxious talk about the missing girl, the witness asked the cleaner when he last saw Stephanie, and he replied that he hadn't seen her on the day she disappeared. When asked if he thought Stephanie might have run away due to wedding stress, the man strangely and nervously laughed, which felt unsettling to the witness. Additionally, the witness noticed that the cleaner's face had scratches. The police decided to question him for additional information. This was 24-year-old Vincent Stanford. Detectives had a brief conversation with Vincent, who explained that he stopped by the school to take out the garbage bins, although he wasn't scheduled to work that day. He claimed he was there for a short time because he was in a hurry to buy groceries. Vincent asserted he didn't see Stephanie at that time and couldn't help, but wished them luck in their search. He added that he left the school after 3 p.m. to go to the store where he always shopped. The police contacted the store that Vincent claimed to visit, only to learn it was closed on the specified date. This meant Vincent had reasons to lie about the store, making him a suspect in the investigation. Investigators decided to conduct another thorough interrogation of Vincent and went to his home, where he lived with his mother. When they arrived, Vincent was not home. His mother allowed the police to search the house, where they found a set of keys on a red and white cord, matching the description of Stephanie Scott's keys. While the police were bagging evidence, Vincent arrived in his car. He was immediately detained, and his car was confiscated. In the back seat, they found several MDF panels, seemingly stained with blood. Police also noticed tire tracks in front of the house, not matching Vincent's vehicle. Additionally, a used condom was found on the ground, with its wrapper in the bedroom. They asked Vincent where he was on that day, and pointing to a camera on the front passenger seat, he said he was taking photos. Detectives asked for permission to view the camera, and Vincent agreed with a shrug. When the police turned on the camera, the first image they saw was a photo of a burnt woman's corpse lying in a wooded area. Vincent tried to explain it away as just shots from a movie he had filmed, thinking they were funny. However, the police realized these were actual crime scene photos, with Stephanie as the victim. Vincent Stanford, the cleaner at Leeton High School, was immediately arrested. His seized phone and laptop revealed many photos of young girls, both from Leeton High School and from the internet, as well as pictures of women he obviously stalked. This painted a grim picture of his behavior. Although Stephanie's body had not yet been found, Vincent was charged with her murder on April 9th. News of his arrest quickly spread. Vincent Stanford, 24, was detained in connection with Stephanie Scott's disappearance and presumed murder. During this time, a search team found Stephanie's car abandoned in a secluded area, 8 kilometers from where she was last seen. However, her body was still missing, and the search continued. Detectives worked to identify the location where the photos with the body were taken. On April 17th, 5 days after last seeing Stephanie, another witness came forward. He reported seeing a car near a canal around 4 p.m. on Easter Sunday. A man got out of the car and threw an object resembling a laptop into the water before driving away. The police soon retrieved the laptop from the canal bed, confirming it belonged to Stephanie. Meanwhile, divers continued to search for the slain schoolteacher's body in the New South Wales River area. Reporter Natalie Cooper, in a live broadcast, discussed the ongoing search for Stephanie's body. The 26-year-old schoolteacher's body was still missing. Police scoured fields and vineyards near where her red Mazda was found earlier in the week. Police divers also explored the canal in the area, retrieving a laptop believed to be Stephanie's. Cooper mentioned a shrine near the site visited by many that morning. The entire community was deeply saddened, regardless of personal acquaintance with Stephanie. Her family and fiance visited the shrine the previous night, lighting candles, praying, and comforting each other in their grief. The reporter also noted that police were desperately searching for any sightings of a white vehicle, believed to be owned by Vincent Stanford, the suspect in Stephanie Scott's murder. Witnesses were urged to contact the police immediately. Meanwhile, Vincent, in custody, voluntarily approached the police, requesting to speak with them. He divulged all details to the detectives, including information on where to find Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was in the upstairs teacher's room working on a computer with the door to her office open. Vincent was cleaning garbage bins using a pressure vacuum and needed to take some bins upstairs. That's when he noticed Stephanie. Vincent told the detectives that he suddenly had the urge to kill her and quickly went home to fetch his special kit, including handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and cleaning supplies. He also Googled information about bride violence en route. Returning, he found Stephanie packing up to leave. When she walked past him, she looked into his eyes and smiled, wishing him a happy Easter. That's when Vincent abruptly grabbed her and dragged her into a storeroom. Detectives reminded him of the scratches on his face they noticed during their first encounter and asked about their origin. It turned out some scratches were from Stephanie's microphone and others from her nails as she defended herself while he tried to kill her. Vincent described how he grabbed Stephanie from behind, covered her mouth with his right hand, and encircled her waist with his left hand before taking her to the storeroom. He shut the door and violently threw her to the ground, hitting her from left to right. After assaulting Stephanie, Vincent used the knife to kill her. He felt compelled to do so, admitting to harboring many brutal thoughts and schemes, and having previously killed others. He speculated about having some psychological issues, clarifying that he harbored no hatred towards his victims, but simply enjoyed killing. Vincent then recalled feeling a hunger pang and decided to go home for a sandwich and coffee. Leaving Stephanie lying alone on the storeroom floor, he went to his car. After eating, he returned to the school, placed Stephanie's body in the trunk of her car, and drove her to his home, parking the car on the street. On Easter Monday, Vincent drove Stephanie's car with her body to a national park. There, he removed her body from the trunk and stripped it on the ground. He noticed many bruises and abrasions on Stephanie's face, including swelling on the right side and a bruise under her eye. He then decided to cover the body with branches and douse it with gasoline. He used a match to ignite the fire, which he discarded nearby. Vincent stayed briefly, taking several photos of Stephanie's body with his camera, then waited 5 minutes to ensure the fire was well lit before leaving. He abandoned Stephanie's car on a secluded country road and walked back to town. In response to detectives' questions about the brutal treatment of Stephanie, Vincent continued to deny such actions, although the officers knew it to be untrue. As a result, he faced additional charges of aggravated harm and physical injury to a woman. Investigators inquired why, in the photographs, the woman was undressed except for a bra. Vincent explained that he usually removes almost everything, leaving only the bra. He wasn't sure why he did this, possibly wanting a souvenir. He admitted taking Stephanie's bra. Regarding her earrings and wedding ring, Vincent claimed he didn't remember when he removed them from the woman, but likely threw them in a trash bin along with other items. In fact, Vincent had removed Stephanie's wedding and graduation rings and sent them to his twin brother Marcus, who lived in Adelaide. Marcus sold the rings and earrings at a jewelry store, then destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photograph of it. A 24-year-old man was arrested at his home in the Adelaide Hills around 7 a.m. Neighbors were shocked, but the next chapter in a murder case captivating the nation unfolded right on their doorstep. It was shocking and unsettling for their small street and community. Marcus, Vincent's identical twin, worked on a flower farm. His colleagues described him as very quiet and reserved, hardly interacting with them beyond work. During the trial, Marcus Stanford had no lawyer, and when the judge asked if there were any reasons he should not be sent to Leeton, he replied with a strong Dutch accent that he had never been there and did not need to go. However, the next morning, he was taken to Sydney under police escort and remained in custody. Stephanie's family was further devastated when the police announced a second arrest in Stephanie's case, Vincent's twin brother Marcus. Finally, the search for the missing Stephanie came to an end. In fact, while Vincent was still giving his confession, the police had already located Stephanie's body. A day before her wedding date, a burnt body of a woman was found in a national park 60 miles from Leeton Middle School. Detailed investigation revealed that Stephanie had been brutally beaten on the head with a total of 40 blows, causing her death. Additionally, she had been stabbed in the neck before her body was discarded and set on fire. Photographs found on Vincent's phone conclusively showed that they were of Stephanie. Vincent Stanford's guilt was undeniable, and both he and his brother Marcus were brought to trial. In court, events unfolded unexpectedly. Initially, Vincent denied his guilt, and the proceedings became uncertain. However, based on the presented evidence and police work, it was decided that the case could lead to a conviction. Psychological tests showed that Vincent was believed to be a serial killer, posing a danger. He displayed a lack of emotions and sympathy, was merciless and indifferent, often laughing and not taking the situation seriously. Several troubling moments from his biography came to light. Vincent Stanford was born in Australia, but his family moved to the Netherlands when he was 3 years old. They later returned to New South Wales. At age 7, he dreamt of committing a murder. At 12, he nearly strangled his teacher. Classmates called him a psychopath, and due to problems with violence and disobedience, he was sent to a behavior correction school. He said he could never adapt to society and was later placed in a psychiatric center where he was diagnosed with autism and oppositional defiant disorder. Vincent told the police that after being released, he tried to enter university or join the army but was rejected in both cases. Therefore, he worked at several different places before getting a job as a cleaner at Leeton Middle School. His initial contract was for 5 weeks but was then extended. While working at the school, he often hid in the women's restroom during student lunch breaks to watch them. Examining Vincent's mobile phone, detectives found he stalked girls at the school and 2 other women working in nearby shops before murdering Stephanie. Numerous photos of one young girl, about 2,000, were found on his phone. He also kept diary entries about her, following her home several times and noting when she left, trying to determine who else was inside. One entry read, "She's home alone at 15:40, enough time to abduct." He initially targeted this young girl, but when his plan failed because she left town, he turned his attention to Stephanie, who worked at the school. Upon careful examination of Vincent's car, it was found that stains on MDF panels confirmed the presence of Stephanie's DNA. Additionally, during a search inside the Stanford home, investigators found traces of Stephanie's blood on a knife, several condom packets, and her bra. After admitting guilt in selling Stephanie's rings, destroying evidence, and assisting Vincent in hiding facts, Vincent's twin brother Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison. The judge noted that Marcus's sentence did not include the possibility of early parole, as there is no such practice. Marcus was sentenced to 1 year and 3 months in prison for his involvement in Stephanie Scott's murder. The sentence was to end on September 9, 2016. Had Marcus not pleaded guilty, he would have been sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison. In October 2016, Marcus was released. Over 60 people signed a petition calling for an appeal of the court's decision regarding Marcus Stanford, describing it as pathetic. After his release from prison, Marcus briefly returned to Leeton, accompanied by his mother. However, the local community made it clear that his presence was unwelcome and his current whereabouts remain unknown. Marcus has apologized for his actions since his release, claiming he will cause no further trouble and admitting his actions were truly foolish. He regrets his inability to change the past. Marcus wishes to have no contact with his brother Vincent and does not seek to establish any. The twins' father, Steve, expressed confusion and fear over Vincent's crimes and has no desire to communicate with him. He rules out the possibility of meeting Vincent and wants nothing to do with him. Steve stated he cannot comprehend why Vincent committed these crimes, and frankly, he does not intend to seek an answer. On the day before Stephanie's 28th birthday, Vincent Stanford was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder and 15 years for sexual violence under aggravating circumstances. Both sentences were effective from April 8, 2015. During the trial, Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, stated that Vincent was unable to cope with his own life and therefore took Stephanie's, depriving her of a chance at a happy future. They will never know the full extent of their daughter's suffering, but the knowledge that she suffered is too hard to bear. Thus, the family prefers to retreat from the public eye to mourn their beautiful girl and overcome their grief. In the future, Stephanie's relatives will not respond to questions, participate in interviews, or television programs. The day after the trial, the family planned to celebrate Stephanie's too short and amazing life on what would have been her 28th birthday, the second birthday they've celebrated without her. A tea party with mint cookies was scheduled for 3 p.m., and Stephanie's mother invited everyone to join. The Scott family also called for stricter screening and evaluation of school staff to prevent similar incidents in the future and reduce risks to students like those faced by Stephanie Scott. Tragically, more than a year after Stephanie's death, her father Robert died in a bizarre accident when a tree fell on him, leading to his death. He was buried near the same place where his daughter was interred. Having lost Stephanie, Aaron moved to Europe, hoping to heal his pain associated with New South Wales. 5 years after losing his beloved, Aaron met a new love and announced his engagement to a woman named Samantha. The community of Leeton was deeply affected by the tragic story of Stephanie Scott. She will never be forgotten, and her life story has been immortalized in books. Stephanie's family hopes that people will remember her and all her remarkable qualities, her passion for teaching, helping, and mentoring others. They believe Stephanie embodied all the good qualities of a human being and made a significant impact on many lives. In her memory, her loved ones encourage everyone to be kind to themselves and strive to do good in the world. Stephanie Scott's story leaves a profound mark that inspires everyone to live a life filled with caring for others. One summer day in 2014, the New York Police Department received an unexpected call from a woman requesting to speak with the detective handling the Shelle Covlin case. The caller was Deborah Holmes, and she urgently requested a meeting with the investigators. Receiving such surprising news, they hoped this unexpected call might help thaw the long, stagnant investigation into a tragic loss that had been at a standstill for 5 years. It was about the case of Shelle Danishevsky's tragic demise, which had caused a stir in Manhattan on the eve of New Year's 2010. Shelle Covlin grew up on the West Side, immersed in an Orthodox Jewish community. Her family's deep-seated roots in this tight-knit neighborhood shaped her upbringing. Shelle's journey from a blissful childhood to an accomplished adulthood was marked by her love for learning and academic excellence. This passion for knowledge eventually led her to a prestigious degree in asset management, opening doors to a thriving career in the Swiss banking sector. Her rapid ascent in the financial world saw her skillfully managing multi-million-dollar portfolios for her clients. In 1998, despite a successful career in one of the world's wealthiest cities, Shelle felt a void in her life. She had financial security and a loving family, yet her dream of having her own family and becoming a mother remained unfulfilled. In February 1998, determined to change her destiny, Shelle attended a Jewish singles event aimed at helping those seeking their significant other. It was there that she met 26-year-old Rod Covlin, a fellow professional in the banking sector. The young couple shared many common interests, both driven by ambitions for success and stability in life. Their connection was instant and profound. The relationship blossomed rapidly as they complemented each other perfectly, disregarding the notable age difference. Shelle and Rod were inseparable, spending every moment together. Their love was so intense that shortly after meeting, they decided to get married. Despite some acquaintances considering it a hasty decision, for Rod and Shelle, everything felt just right. The happy couple soon welcomed 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, completing their family. On New Year's Eve 2009, the idyllic life of the Covlin family was shattered by a tragic accident. that led to Shelle's death. Initially, the police deemed it a freak mishap. At the early stage of the investigation, they were convinced it was just that. Early in the morning of December 31st, at the Manhattan police station, two officers wrapping up their night shift were discussing their holiday plans over coffee. However, the calm atmosphere was abruptly disrupted at 7:30 a.m. by an urgent phone call. Rod Covlin from the Upper West Side, in a frantic state, informed the officers about bizarre occurrences at his ex-wife Shelle Danishevsky's house. He had found her in her bathtub, submerged in blood-stained water, lifeless. Emergency services hoped Rod could provide the necessary assistance to save the victim. Following the operator's instructions over the phone, Rod pulled her out of the water and attempted resuscitation, but it soon became clear that saving her life was impossible. Shelle's body was cold and motionless. A distraught Rod covered her with a blanket he found in the bedroom and waited for the police to arrive. Thus, on the last day of 2009, Manhattan witnessed a heartbreaking event in the life of Rod Covlin. The police team arrived swiftly at the scene of the incident. Upon arrival, they quickly assessed the situation and cordoned off a central street in Manhattan. They were greeted by a lavish residence just steps away from the city park. The Upper West Side was known for its safety, and the officers initially surmised that Shelle Danishevsky's death was another tragic case of self-harm. Entering the apartment, they found children's toys scattered around, not unusual given the upcoming holiday. They then proceeded to the bathroom, where the woman's body, wrapped in a blanket by her husband, lay. The bloody water in the tub and the wet floor indicated that Rod had recently pulled the body from the water. A wound on the back of Shelle's head, still bleeding, was noticeable. Surveying the bathroom, the officers noted an open cabinet door with a torn hinge, suggesting the woman might have slipped and torn it off while trying to hold onto the door. Forensic experts who arrived shortly after conducted a thorough examination to rule out other possible causes of the tragic incident. After a careful inspection, they determined there was no break-in, and no signs of a struggle were found. Investigators increasingly leaned towards the belief that Shelle's death was an accident. The detective handling the case decided to speak with family members. During their questioning, it was revealed that Shelle and Rod's 9-year-old daughter was the first to discover her mother's body. Traumatized and shocked by what she had seen, the girl managed to tell the police officer how everything happened. It turned out that the previous night, she and her younger brother had been sleeping in their mother's bed, a fairly common occurrence. Waking up in the middle of the night and noticing her mother's absence, she went to look for her and stumbled upon the horrifying scene in the bathroom. The frightened child hurriedly contacted her father for help. Rod and Shelle had just separated, and he had moved into a new apartment in the same building on the same floor. Crossing the corridor was all it took to reach his apartment. The girl called her father, who was nearby, and arrived immediately. Entering the bathroom, he pulled Shelle's body from the water and called for emergency services. The girl's account matched exactly what Rod had described, confirming the theory of an accidental death. The police informed Shelle's relatives about the tragedy, which deeply shocked everyone. The autopsy and forensic examination were scheduled for the day after the body was found. However, surprisingly, it never took place. When the medical examiner called the investigators to start the examination, he unexpectedly learned that despite its necessity, the procedure would not be conducted. This baffled the examiner, wondering how this could happen. It turned out that a rabbi from the synagogue Shelle frequented had intervened. He contacted an organization responsible for the burial of Orthodox Jews, which then requested the police for permission to access the tragedy site for religious rites required by the victim's family's faith. Permission was granted, and a team, accompanied by the rabbi, arrived at the scene. They cleaned the bathtub of blood traces and prepared Shelle's body before the burial. All collected evidence and clues were destroyed before reaching the police's forensic department. The organization acted swiftly because autopsies are considered taboo in Orthodox Jewish tradition, seen as desecrating the deceased's body. In this case, the synagogue's rabbi exerted pressure on Shelle's family. Grieving relatives and husband, appreciative of the rabbi's assistance and with no doubts about the accidental nature of the incident, didn't object to his help. The family also agreed to forgo the autopsy, leaving the funeral arrangements to the burial preparation organization. Thus, within 24 hours, Shelle was buried. Hundreds of people attended to pay their last respects and offer condolences to the family. Later, upon learning from the police that potential clues were destroyed during the cleaning of the bathroom, doubts about the official version of Shelle's death began to haunt her parents. A fall in the bathtub certainly posed a risk, but the likelihood of death from such an accident seemed increasingly improbable to them. Although nothing substantiated their doubts, the thought that their daughter's demise was not accidental troubled them deeply. Since the evidence was destroyed, the New York Police Department lost the opportunity for further investigation, prompting the family to hire a private detective to clarify the circumstances and verify if Shelle's death was indeed due to a tragic fall. The private investigator hired by the woman's relatives began unraveling this peculiar case, first visiting the deceased's family home to speak with the relatives. From their statements, he learned that Rod and Shelle's relationship was far from perfect, and their marriage had been facing serious challenges. The couple had celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary in 2008, but soon after, their marital bliss began to crumble. Rod faced difficulties in his career, frequently changing jobs. It was revealed that he had developed a gambling addiction, investing huge sums in it. These behavioral changes worried Shelle. She was dissatisfied with her husband neglecting the family, spending extensive time on computer games. Rod was using their savings for backgammon tournaments, which Shelle had complained about to her close ones, frustrated by the amount of family money he spent on his numerous travels. Additionally, she discovered that he had been unfaithful during his many trips. It's important to note that Shelle was neither passive nor naive regarding her husband's behavior. Upon discovering his infidelities through his emails, she decided to end their marital relationship and obtained permission for a religious divorce. Externally, the couple still appeared as spouses, but Rod had moved into another apartment in the same building. An official divorce required some time to process. Despite their separation and strained relations, Shelle and Rod tried to maintain a friendly facade, especially for their children. However, conflicts and disagreements often arose due to Rod's behavior. Shelle had recently expressed to her close ones her grievances about her husband, describing him as aggressive and hot-tempered. She felt he was monitoring her, entering her apartment when she wasn't home and checking her emails. She also suspected that Rod had installed a camera in the building's corridor to see when she came home. These complexities in their marital life could have been grounds for further investigation into Shelle's death. Gathering all these details, the private detective proposed the theory that Rod might have been involved in his wife's demise. He needed to conduct further investigations to uncover the whole truth. The detective's first goal was to determine if a crime had indeed taken place at the scene where the body was found. He planned to inspect Shelle's apartment but encountered a problem. The door was sealed. Without hesitation, he obtained a court order to access the site, and with it, accompanied by New York police officers, he arrived at the scene. He attempted to unlock the door with a key provided in advance, but the stubborn lock resisted for some time. After a few moments, Rod Covlin emerged from his apartment at the end of the corridor. He claimed to have heard noise and came to check what was happening. Upon questioning by the police and the detective, Rod took the key and effortlessly opened the door. This raised some questions for the detective. Did Rod really just happen to hear sounds in the corridor, or was he intentionally monitoring the situation? Once inside the apartment, the detective focused intently on finding evidence to support his theory of murder. According to Shelle's relatives, she was home on December 31st, but her phone was missing. The detective thoroughly searched all rooms, only finding the woman's phone charger, while the phone itself was not located. The detective also faced the task of examining the bathroom, the site of Shelle's demise. He paid special attention to the hinge that investigators believed she had torn off during a fall. The more he examined this item, the more he doubted that Shelle could have torn off the metal detail, which was securely attached to the cabinet. It would have required immense strength, and even considering the woman's weight, there were significant doubts about such a possibility. After a long discussion with law enforcement, the detective tried to convince them that this was not an accident, but a homicide. The investigators were not persuaded, citing a lack of evidence. As a result, a decision was made to perform an autopsy to conclusively determine the cause of death. The impending exhumation of Shelle's body sparked serious contemplation and debate within her family. More than 2 weeks had passed since her burial, and it was a difficult decision for her loved ones to make. In the Jewish religion, such interventions are viewed very negatively, and religious leaders often oppose this practice. The family needed time to decide. Despite the prohibitions, they deemed it crucial to uncover the truth about their daughter's death and agreed to the exhumation. However, this step was complicated not only by moral considerations. To carry out the exhumation, a special order from the prosecutor's office was required, which was not easy to obtain. Despite the family's consent, it took almost 3 months. After securing the necessary documents, the exhumation and autopsy were conducted. The results were startling. The examination revealed that Shelle did not die from a fall but from asphyxiation due to violent strangulation, which had broken her neck bones. Consequently, the official version of her death changed. No longer could her passing be considered an accident, and it was officially recognized that the young woman had been murdered. The detectives' efforts and suspicions proved to be well-founded. The autopsy results of Shelle's body played a pivotal role, prompting the New York Police Department to immediately resume the investigation into her death. Investigators began meticulously examining new details, including phone call records and bank statements, all information crucial in a murder investigation. Besides family members, everyone who had any interaction with Rod and Shelle was questioned: the nanny, housekeeper, and even the lawyer handling their divorce. The lawyer informed the police about the oddities he had observed in the couple's behavior. At the first divorce hearing in May 2009, Rod claimed he couldn't pay alimony due to unemployment. The judge jokingly suggested that Rod might have to give up his favorite games, which infuriated him in the courtroom, revealing his true nature to everyone. Rod didn't stop there. He sought revenge against Shelle, accusing her of an indecent lifestyle, misusing funds, and even calling her employer with slanderous claims about drugs and violence towards their son. These false accusations caused significant trouble for Shelle. An investigation initiated based on these claims found no evidence to support her husband's words. However, the most appalling aspect of this story was when Rod and Shelle's son revealed how his father had coached him to say phrases aimed at discrediting his mother. Rod paid a heavy price for his vile actions. At a new divorce hearing on July 7, 2009, he was prohibited from being alone with his children, a measure that remained in effect even after Shelle's death. Rod was not granted custody of his children, and a social worker handed them over to Rod's parents, inciting his rage. He likely believed that he would finally take responsibility for his children. Police also interviewed a woman who had previously cared for Rod's children before being dismissed by him. She provided detectives with intriguing information. It turned out that on December 30th, Shelle underwent an expensive keratin hair treatment worth several $100s. Post-treatment recommendations included avoiding moisture and heat exposure for several days, thus prohibiting baths or showers. This raised a question. Why would Shelle risk damaging her hair by disregarding these recommendations? Investigators speculated that Shelle didn't take a bath on the day of her death. However, their conclusions weren't direct evidence, and it was insufficient to charge anyone with murder based on this alone. Detectives also reviewed the building's surveillance footage where the couple lived. On the day of the murder, they noticed Rod's peculiar behavior. At 4 a.m., he left his apartment dressed as if he was going outside. He returned after some time. The night watchman at the building's entrance, who was interrogated, found Rod's early morning outing unusual, as he had never left so early before. The watchman remembered Rod asking if he needed anything, to which he replied negatively. However, Rod returned a few minutes later with chocolate bars, offering them to him. The investigators believed Rod's behavior was deliberate to create an alibi for himself. Rod now became the primary suspect, and the investigators' task was to prove his guilt by any means necessary. Their main question was, what could have driven Rod to murder his wife? During the investigation, despite 2 divorce hearings, Shelle and Rod were still officially married, meaning that without a will or divorce, the property would automatically go to Rod. It was a matter of over $5 million. Another crucial point was that on December 31st, 2009, Shelle had made an appointment with her lawyer to change her will, intending to exclude her husband. This undoubtedly was a blow to Rod and provided a motive for the crime. The money, $5 million, which Rod could lose, was undoubtedly such a motive. Since he was already a suspect, all of Shelle's assets were transferred to a secure account, pending further evidence of his involvement in the crime. It was clear that if Rod had been monitoring his wife, he could have known about her meeting with the lawyer to remove him from the will. Investigators suspected that Rod had installed spyware to track his wife. Surveillance footage also showed Shelle returning home at 8 p.m. the night before, talking on the phone, which was never found after the crime. Now they knew for sure the phone was in the apartment. They decided to conduct another search of the crime scene. Upon returning to the apartment, the investigators didn't have to look long. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Shelle's mobile phone calmly lying on her bedside table, connected to the charger. Neither during the New York police's initial search, nor during the private detective's examination, had anyone noticed the device in this location. Furthermore, investigators had photographed the room during previous searches, and the phone wasn't on the bedside table in the photos. There was only one explanation. Rod had brought the mobile phone back into Shelle's sealed apartment. Whether this act was a foolish mistake or a deliberate taunt of the investigation was anyone's guess. Rod was called in for questioning, but he had already hired a lawyer who advised him to remain silent. The investigators had to continue looking for new evidence of his involvement. After examining Rod's phone records, police found frequent calls to a number registered in Jacksonville, North Carolina. The number belonged to Deborah Holmes, a married woman with 3 children. She was 14 years older than Rod. They had met at a backgammon competition 5 months before Shelle's murder and had a passionate affair. The lovers met during backgammon tournaments or played online together. The investigators saw a chance to find a lead and decided to call the woman to ask her a few questions. To their surprise, Deborah responded that her lawyer had advised her not to speak to them. Confronted with another refusal, law enforcement officials decided to inquire about the name of the attorney. It turned out to be the same lawyer representing Rod Covlin. The police's last hope rested on finding compromising messages or electronic correspondence between Rod and Deborah. They hoped to discover these on Shelle's recently found phone. Unfortunately, all messages had been professionally deleted. Even expert programmers couldn't retrieve the data. Rod had meticulously planned everything, seemingly mocking the authorities. Days turned into months and years, and it became apparent that Rod Covlin was evading justice. Perhaps the crime he committed was perfect, but the rabbi's cleanup of the bathroom, erasing all traces of blood and other evidence, played a crucial role. This action destroyed all potential DNA, fingerprints, or fibers, complicating the investigation, which increasingly dragged on. Rod never admitted to his crime, and the lack of evidence prevented the case from going to trial. 5 years had passed since the investigation into Shelle's demise began, yet no arrests had been made. After years of fruitless searches for clues and evidence of Rod Covlin's involvement in his wife's demise, the suspect's mistress suddenly came forward. Following her phone call, the police invited her to the station. Deborah Holmes immediately came in. It turned out that she and Rod had broken up a few months earlier, prompting her to contact the police. What she shared with the investigators over the next 3 days shocked them. Deborah had much to reveal. She told them about Rod's plans concerning custody of his children. Since Rod was still a suspect in his wife's demise and had no custody rights over the children, he couldn't access his deceased wife's money. Rod was prepared to do anything to seize Shelle's millions and had hatched a vile plan. Covlin planned to convince his 15-year-old daughter to fake an assault, later accusing his father, Rod's dad, of the crime. This would land the grandfather in jail, losing custody rights over the grandchildren. Rod hoped his daughter would agree to his plan in exchange for money. Meanwhile, the criminal had been regularly withdrawing money from the only account he had access to, the one where Shelle had deposited funds for their children's education. Rod's parents noticed he was squandering the savings, which should have been for his daughter and son's future. They were very unhappy with his lack of interest in his children's lives, leading to a dispute. Rod was so angry with his parents that he seriously contemplated ending their lives. In 2012, Rod Covlin confided his plan to Deborah. He intended to have his daughter put rat poison in her grandparents' tea. Since the girl was a minor, Rod calculated she would spend much less time in prison than he would. Deborah persuaded her lover to abandon this evil intent. Following this, Rod conceived several other ideas. At one point, he contemplated burning down his parents' house, jamming the doors to trap them inside. He also considered arranging a sham marriage for his daughter to a Mexican man, after which she would have to relinquish part of her inheritance to her father. Listening to Deborah's testimony, the police couldn't believe the reality of such details. All this time, she had been gathering evidence, amassing a trove of data on hard drives. Realizing she was dealing with a psychopath, she cautiously waited for Rod to lose interest in her before handing these valuable insights over to the investigators. The recordings contained hundreds, perhaps thousands, of Rod's conversations with various people. Now the law enforcement officers had to meticulously listen to these gigabytes of data in search of convincing evidence. Deborah's contribution to this complex investigation was significant. As investigators began analyzing the recordings, they discovered something astonishing. In a conversation with a backgammon acquaintance, Rod inadvertently mentioned having keys to Shelle's apartment and the ability to enter it at any time. These hard drives became a real treasure for the police, extracting hundreds of materials related to the case. Investigators found that Rod was plotting against his own daughter, planning to pin the responsibility for the mother's demise on her. In an email address that the father used to forge an email, it was claimed that the daughter admitted to lying and that her mother didn't just fall. According to the fabricated story, they had an argument in the evening, and in anger, she pushed her mother in the bathroom. Thanks to all the information gathered, the police finally had compelling evidence to charge Rod Covlin with the demise of his wife. On November 1st, 2015, Rod Covlin was arrested. Shelle's family awaited the trial of their daughter's perpetrator, but victory was not assured. The charges were circumstantial, and a skilled lawyer could instill doubt in the jurors' minds. Detectives continued their investigation, gathering new data and meticulously verifying all evidence. Soon, irrefutable proof emerged from an unexpected source. While in prison, Rod Covlin revealed details of his wife's demise to a fellow inmate. He described his actions in detail, even mimicking the gesture he used to strangle her. The police requested surveillance footage and found it perfectly matched the autopsy results. This was direct evidence of Rod's guilt, almost amounting to a confession. The trial lasted 7 long weeks. During this time, the jury heard all the heinous plans Covlin intended to execute, including taking his wife's life, targeting his parents, and framing his own children. The jury was appalled by his cold-blooded and deceitful nature. It took them 2 days to reach a final verdict. In March 2019, the court found Rod Covlin guilty of the demise of Shelle Danishevsky, his wife, and the mother of his children. Despite the lack of direct evidence, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole only after 25 years. Shelle Covlin was a successful and determined woman who sought simple family happiness. However, a ruthless, greedy monster crossed her path, destroying not only her life, but also those of her children and loved ones. This tragic story found justice thanks to Deborah Holmes's determination. The criminal was punished for his horrific actions. Deborah's courage likely helped not only in achieving justice, but also in preventing possible future crimes. Rod Covlin will never again harm his family or the citizens of New York. In February 2018, the quiet town of Deltona, located in eastern Florida off the Atlantic coast, was rocked by news of the brutal murder of a young man named Patrick Deera. The 25-year-old man was found dead in his home, and the nature of his injuries suggested that the perpetrator had a personal grudge against him. The Patrick Deera case is an example of an almost perfect, elaborate, and planned crime that may well have gone unsolved. Although the murderer was named almost immediately, no direct evidence was found to prove his guilt. As later claimed investigator Chad Weaver, who investigated the case, he realized from the beginning that it would be a real detective, worthy of screen adaptation. In fact, so it happened. Who is Patrick Deera? Patrick Deera was born in June 1992 in one of the most picturesque metropolitan areas, Miami, in the state of Florida. His father, Max Deera, was a native of Spain, and his mother, Patricia Ronza, was born and raised in France, but in the 80s moved to the United States, where he soon married and gave birth to a son. Deera family was very friendly and happy. Patrick grew up in an atmosphere of love, care, and mutual respect. He was a very kind, intelligent, and sociable guy, studied well in school, could easily become the soul of any company and chalk a lot of friends. And also the boy from childhood years was very close to his parents, who did not spare no effort and money to ensure that the son received a good education and grew up a worthy man. The head of the family worked all his life in the field of construction and was an excellent specialist in his field. The family was not rich, but was considered quite well-to-do by the standards of the big city. After graduating from high school, Patrick decided to enter the construction faculty to continue his father's work. When the young man was studying at university, his parents, after almost a quarter of a century of living together, decided to divorce. It should be noted that they parted very quietly and peacefully, without scandals, division of property, and the like. The mother moved to the quiet town of Deltona, located in the east of the state, where she soon remarried. The adult son decided to stay with his father in Miami, where they worked together and were respected and sought after professionals in the construction industry. Despite the divorce of the parents, all family members remained very close and were friendly with each other. They were always in touch with each other, calling and communicating regularly, and were always ready to help when needed. Patrick regularly visited his mother in Deltona, told her about everything that was happening in his life, shared his joys and experiences. Meeting the girl of his dreams. Thanks to his French-Spanish roots, the young man from an early age had a bright appearance and enjoyed great success with the fair sex. But for him has always been an example of the family in which he grew up, so Patrick did not seek frivolous and fleeting affairs. He dreamed of a bright, mutual feeling and a strong family of his own. With the girl of his dreams, Deera met by chance on the internet, on one of the popular sites where lonely hearts are looking for each other. He registered there and created an account on the advice of a friend, but he himself did not fully believe that it was really possible to meet his soulmate there. One June evening in 2017, without much enthusiasm, he was flipping through the profiles of girls on the site, as suddenly his attention was attracted by a photo which depicted a searing brunette with a rather unusual bright appearance. She had big, just bottomless eyes and a charming smile. Patrick was literally enchanted and decided to write to the beautiful stranger. She responded to his message, and a relaxed communication started between them. The girl's name was Jessica Devnani. She was born in 1988 in the city of Orlando, located in the central part of the state of Florida. After graduating from high school, she entered one of the local universities, where she studied banking, and after graduating, she got a job at a bank branch in her native Orlando. Jessica was also immediately attracted to the handsome young man. For a few days, they corresponded actively on the website and then decided to exchange phone numbers. For the next couple of weeks, they called each other every evening and talked for hours about everything. The couple quickly developed mutual sympathy and trust, so the young people decided to meet in real life. But since they lived in different parts of the state, they chose a place about halfway to each other for the meeting. Already on the first date, Patrick realized that Jessica was the girl he had been looking for so long, and whom he now does not want to let go. She also liked him immediately, and Jessica was a little confused by the age difference, because she was 4 years older than Patrick. On the way home, Patrick called his mother and told her that he had met the girl of his dreams, whom he wanted to marry and start a family. Patricia heard the joy and excitement in her son's voice, realized that he was serious, and was happy for him. This long-distance relationship lasted several months, and it was a big problem, because the couple could only see each other on weekends, somewhere neutral. Usually they rented a hotel room in some cozy, secluded place and just enjoyed each other's company. But on Sunday night, everyone flew back to their homes because they had to go to work on Monday morning. Marriage proposal. In December 2017, Patrick moved to Delton, where his mother lived, to be closer to his sweetheart. He bought a house there in a quiet neighborhood and began to carry out some repair work, preparing a cozy nest for the move of his chosen one. But Jessica could not yet so immediately leave work, and they planned a housewarming party for early spring next year. On the eve of the new year, which the couple met together, the young man decided to make his girlfriend a surprise. He arranged fireworks in the backyard of the house, and while Jessica admired the fireworks, got down on one knee and held out a box with a ring, asking her the most important question: will she become his lawful wife? Jessica was unspeakably happy, and of course answered him in agreement. Patrick admitted that he had been looking for a ring suitable for the engagement for a long time, but he had not found the perfect one in any of the jewelry stores. All of them seemed to him not beautiful and refined enough for such an occasion. He chose the best of what was available to be able to make a proposal before the new year, but ordered another one in the jewelry workshop, an exclusive ring, the design of which the young man came up with himself. Something had happened to Patrick. 2 months have passed since the engagement. Preparations for the wedding and the upcoming housewarming were in full swing. The couple's choice was approved by their parents, and they themselves were unspeakably happy, preparing for a new stage of their lives. The young people planned to arrange a lavish celebration in Miami, on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, or in France, where the groom's mother was from. On February 27, 2018, Max de la Cerda, Patrick's father, received a call from a courier. The father's number was listed as an additional contact. The courier reported that his son's order was delivered to the specified address, but the customer does not open the door and does not answer the phone. This was very unlike Patrick, so the father immediately got worried, but since he was at work at that moment and could not go to pick up the order, and at the same time to check if everything was all right with his son, Max decided to ask his future daughter-in-law. He called Jessica, and with anxiety in his voice said that he couldn't reach his son. Jessica herself had been trying to contact her fiance since morning, but he didn't answer messages and calls. When she mentioned this to Patrick's father, Max pronounced, "Something must have happened to Patrick." Jessica immediately dropped everything she was doing and headed to the groom's house as fast as she could. When she pulled up, she immediately saw Patrick's car in the driveway, which indicated that he hadn't gone anywhere. Since she had her own key, Jessica entered the yard and called out loudly to her lover several times, but there was no response. Jessica carefully opened the front door and saw a horrifying picture. Her fiancé was lying practically at the entrance, in a pool of his own blood. He showed no signs of life. Jessica immediately rushed to call the emergency services, but the paramedics who arrived on the scene were unable to help Patrick and only declared him dead. By the time the police arrived, a distraught Jessica was sobbing in the backyard of the house where Patrick had proposed 2 months earlier. When one of the officers approached her, she only looked at him and told him she knew who had massacred her lover and ruined her entire life. A rich and powerful ex-boyfriend. To understand this difficult case, and to understand who could want to kill a young guy who at first glance had neither enemies nor ill wishers, you need to go back a little bit, at the time when he and Jessica just met. The thing is that, at that time, the girl was in a relationship with a certain Gregory Bender, a wealthy businessman who owned his own investment fund. Jessica met Gregory in her student years. He was 20 years older than her, and he literally turned the young beauty's head. The businessman wooed her beautifully, gave her expensive gifts, and took her to fancy resorts. Jessica thought she had found her one and only love, but soon she began to notice some oddities in his behavior. Gregory sought to control his girlfriend in everything, closely watched where she goes and with whom she communicates. If Jessica had an admirer, he immediately got rid of him through threats and intimidation. At the same time, he told her almost nothing about himself. This relationship lasted almost 8 years, and during this time, Gregory never introduced his chosen one to his family or friends. They met, spent time together, or went on vacation only when he wanted it, and Gregory rarely invited his girlfriend to his house. He himself argued that he was very busy. Naturally, Jessica wanted to have a normal family, to have children, but Bender said every time that it was not yet time for that. And when she tried to break off the relationship, Gregory gave her a ring and asked her to marry him. Jessica accepted, but nothing had changed. They still lived apart and saw each other only when the groom said so. One day, Gregory was in a car accident and ended up in a hospital bed. When Jessica heard about it, she rushed to him, but beforehand she decided to stop by his house to get some things for Gregory. There, Jessica ran into a woman she had never seen before and asked who she was. The stranger, instead of answering, asked her a similar question. Jessica showed the ring on her finger and said that she was the bride of the owner of the house. The woman then laughed and showed her ring, stating that she was Bender's legal wife, Demora Sanchez Bender. After such a shocking revelation, Jessica decided to immediately part ways with the businessman who had cheated her for so many years. However, the boyfriend began to literally pursue Jessica, begging her to return, promising that he would divorce Demora in the near future, and then they could get married. She once again believed this man, but time passed, and nothing in their relationship did not change. Finally tired of this affair, Jessica filled out a questionnaire on a dating site, where she soon met Patrick. After starting to communicate with him, she firmly decided to break up with Gregory, about which she informed him, but he did not want to let her go. Obsessive stalker. At first, Bender simply persuaded Jessica to come back to him and try to start over, once again promising to divorce his wife. Then he moved on to threats and harassment, and when he realized that all this is useless, decided to search for a rival, about which at that time exactly knew nothing. He had to turn to professionals to hack into Jessica's account and find out who she was communicating with. After finding out who Patrick was and obtaining his contacts, Gregory began sending him threatening messages and demanding that he break up with Jessica, calling her his fiance. Patrick did not react to the threats and was absolutely calm, believing that the matter would not go further than threats. But Jessica was scared because she realized that her ex-boyfriend could expect anything from her. He was a man with a lot of money and connections, and he had a huge collection of firearms that he could use. Jessica offered Patrick to break up before anyone got hurt, but he wouldn't even hear of it. Then they decided to go to the police, providing evidence that Bender was stalking and threatening them. The couple managed to get a restraining order for Gregory to approach them and try to make contact by any means. Gregory was also required to surrender all firearms stored in his home. Things calmed down for a while, and the lovers began to think that the stalker had left them alone. However, Jessica convinced Patrick that it was necessary to install CCTV cameras around and inside the house because she feared that Gregory might violate the ban. A crime scene inspection, and the first theory. But let's go back to the tragic events of February 27, 2018. During the initial examination of the crime scene, criminalists immediately ruled out the version of robbery and noted that, judging by the nature of the mutilation, this murder had a personal motive, and the perpetrator literally hated his victim. On the body of a 25-year-old guy counted 4 gunshot wounds, in the thigh, in the chest, and 2 in the head. In addition, the experts found injuries and bruises characteristic of a fall from a ladder. The body itself was lying on the floor between the front door and the stairs leading to the second floor. Investigators speculated that the killer had most likely snuck into the house and was waiting for the owner on the second floor. When an unsuspecting Patrick went inside and climbed the stairs, the intruder stepped out to meet him and fired the first bullet into his thigh. The wounded young man rolled down the stairs, and the perpetrator followed him down, fired another bullet into his chest, and then finished the victim off with 2 follow-up shots to the head. The murder weapon was not found, but it was a rather rare model of pistol, which was not easy to obtain. The first shell casing was found on the second floor of the house. 2 more similar shell casings were found downstairs, but the 4th shell casing was not there, so it was assumed that the perpetrator took it away with him, perhaps as a trophy. Despite Jessica's words that she knows who killed her fiancé, the first under suspicion was the neighbor of the murdered man, with whom they had a serious conflict a couple of months ago. The man was a combat participant and a veteran of the U.S. Army, was wounded and severely concussed in the war, against which he developed a mental disorder. He was excellent with firearms and could easily get a rare model of gun. In December 2017, the veteran mistook his new neighbor for a burglar and opened fire. Luckily, no one was hurt at the time, but the neighbor was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital due to an exacerbation of his disorder. After he returned home, he constantly followed Patrick, called him a spy, and promised to bring him out in the open. The mentally ill neighbor could indeed have a motive created by his unhealthy imagination, so the man was detained and decided to interrogate. He made no secret of his intense dislike for Patrick, but at the time of the murder itself, he had a 100% alibi, which was confirmed by several people. Searching for evidence and trying to provoke the perpetrator. So, the version of the robbery from the very beginning canceled, because in the house everything was in its place and the money and valuables remained untouched. Only hard disks with recordings made by video surveillance cameras were missing, so it was impossible to trace who entered and left the house that day. In addition, no evidence at all was found at the crime scene. Forensic experts could not find a single fingerprint, shoe print, or DNA trace. The murder was carefully thought out and planned, and although the investigation had little doubt that Gregory was behind it all, it seemed at the time that he could get away with it. The police decided to go on the sly and asked Jessica to call her former lover and bring him to a frank conversation. Jessica agreed without hesitation. She dialed Bender's number and made a spectacle of herself. She blamed him for what had happened, cried, and kept asking why he'd done it. But Gregory seemed to have figured out what the investigators were up to from the start, and persisted in pretending he didn't understand. When Jessica said that he killed her fiance, the businessman pretended to be surprised by this news, and after expressed his condolences to the ex-girlfriend. To get Gregory to confess, to make him mad, or to force him to commit a blunder never succeeded. The police had no reason to detain or question the man. He could only be called to testify. But he honored the restraining order and seemed to have let the ex-girlfriend go long ago. The killer's notes. While the investigation was treading water, trying to find any clues, the police received a call from Daimora Sanchez Bender, saying that she had important information about the Patrick de la Cerda case. The woman was immediately invited to the station for an interview, where she said that shortly before the crime she saw a strange notebook on her husband's desk in his office. Looking into it, Daimora found a detailed plan of some stranger's house, and next to it, there was a strange algorithm of actions. She hadn't paid any attention to it at the time, but when Daimora saw a news report about the brutal murder of a young man, and the story showed the plan of his house, she immediately remembered the sketches of her unfaithful husband, with whom she was on the verge of divorce, and decided to tell the investigators. This information gave the police enough reason to search the house of the alleged perpetrator. The mysterious notebook, about which the wife of the businessman spoke, was found in the office, but the pages with the plan of the house and other records were removed. However, they were soon found in the office, but in a trash can that Gregory had apparently failed or forgotten to empty. He had simply ripped out the pages, crumpled them up, and tossed them in the trash. Apparently, he was confident that his house would not be searched, since there was no evidence against him. On the sheets of paper, in addition to the layout of the house, there was a detailed plan of the crime itself. It became clear that the criminal had prepared long and thoroughly, working out every point. In particular, it was said about the need to turn off the phone, use gloves, and lubricate the soles of shoes with a special compound so that it did not leave traces on the floor. From the records, it became clear that Gregory followed his victim, knew what time Patrick returned home, and was aware of the presence of surveillance cameras in the house and yard. In addition, Gregory made sure to dispose of the crime weapon, dirty clothes, shoes, and gloves. He was only let down by the fact that his own records had not been destroyed in time and his wife's curiosity. In addition, a fourth missing shell casing was found on the table, in a cigar box, which the gunman was supposed to have carried off as a trophy. Forensics confirmed that it was the exact same shell casing from the crime scene. The trial and the defense attorney's attempts to shift the blame to Jessica. The evidence was enough to arrest Gregory and initiate a trial. But the main problem was that all the evidence found could be called circumstantial because the crime weapon was never found. There was no evidence that the accused had ever been to the victim's house, and there were no witnesses. Bender's trial did not begin until May 2021, more than 3 years after his atrocity. During this time, he hired the best lawyers who had time to thoroughly prepare for the case. The businessman was optimistic and seemed to believe that he would get away with it. Jessica was a key witness. She detailed her relationship with Gregory over many years, how she learned he was married and tried to break up with him, as well as the harassment and threats he made against her and Patrick. As evidence, she provided saved screenshots of correspondence as well as phone records. In response, Bender's attorneys attempted to shift all the blame onto Jessica. The defense stated that Jessica herself provoked Gregory with her behavior because she registered on a dating site and started a new relationship, not yet broken up with Gregory, which hurt his pride and ego. Also, Jessica was accused of mercantilism, noting that she liked to receive expensive gifts from a rich suitor. The main evidence, sheets with records of the murder plan, the lawyers called only a fantasy of a wounded man who wanted to take revenge on his rival. At the same time, the defense insisted that the defendant did not go further than plans and fantasies, so his traces of the scene of the crime were not found. In addition, according to the lawyers, the search in the house of their client was illegal and was conducted with violations, and therefore the second evidence, a shell casing, he could simply plant it in the process. The crime weapon was also not found, and the model of the gun Jessica identified from a picture, saying that she had previously seen it in the collection of her boyfriend. But she could be wrong, because she was not well versed in weapons. Ex-wife testimony and final judgment. At one of the sessions, the defendant's now ex-wife, Dimora Sanchez, was called as a witness. The man, who had hitherto looked indifferent, suddenly became animated and unexpectedly confessed his love for her. The ex-wife was moved by this confession and apparently changed her mind about testifying against Gregory. She confused her testimony, citing her forgetfulness, and finally added that she had lived with the man for many years and doubted that he was capable of murder. Despite attempts by defense attorneys to challenge the legality of the search of the defendant's home, despite his ex-wife's unexpected statement, and despite the lack of direct evidence, the jury, after hours of deliberation, still found Gregory Bender guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, barring him from ever being eligible for parole. As the judge read out the sentence, the defendant stared at Jessica intently, seemingly without even blinking. He was literally glaring at her, which made her feel sick and almost had a panic attack. She sat next to her late fiance's mother and at one point began sobbing and literally choking. Despite numerous attempts by Bender and his highly paid lawyers to appeal the verdict and get the case reviewed, all of their appeals were rejected. Not the least role in this played a wide resonance of the case in society, because a wealthy millionaire businessman in cold blood massacred a simple working man and tried to get away with it. The story of Patrick Deera was widely covered in the press. With Gregory Bender still behind bars at the moment, Jessica Devnani says she feels safe and continues to live for Patrick and keep his memory alive. She wears the ring he gave her as a gift, as well as that exclusive piece of jewelry Patrick never got around to giving her. Jessica maintains a close relationship with her deceased fiance's parents, who treat her like their own daughter.